Have you ever wondered why some people pulling in, say, upwards of 30 lakhs a year still seem to constantly struggle with their finances, while others earning way less are just quietly achieving total financial independence? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. Welcome to this explainer where we're going to completely unpack a deeply personal, totally transformative financial journey. You know, for the longest time, the default assumption was just, earn more money. That's the secret to wealth, right? But as we'll see today, the real secret isn't actually about the size of your paycheck at all. It's about fundamentally changing how you think. We're going to trace a path from knowing absolutely nothing outside of a basic fixed deposit all the way to hitting full-blown financial independence. And look, the goal here is pretty straightforward. If mapping out this journey helps even one of you avoid some of the insanely expensive mistakes made along the way, then digging into this today is absolutely going to be worth our time.
All right, let's start at the beginning. Section 1. The Old World and the Inciting Incident.
Because to really understand the destination, you kind of have to look at the starting line. Growing up in a pretty typical Indian middle-class family, the concept of investing had a very narrow definition. Basically, if you managed to save a few bucks, you booked a fixed deposit. That was it. And if you pointed to someone who was wealthy, the default explanation around the dinner table was always, oh, well, they just bought land at the exact right time. That was the entire playbook for wealth creation. Nobody was sitting around explaining mutual funds or the nuances of the equity market or breaking down ETFs or asset allocation. It wasn't that we were financially illiterate, we were just financially uneducated. And then the inciting incident happened, COVID-19. Suddenly, the whole world just stopped. No soul-crushing commutes, no rushing to the office. It gave us that one rare commodity, time. And with that time came a massive internet rabbit hole that led straight to FIRE. Financial independence, retire early. Now, I'll be honest, the initial reaction to this was just pure laughter. I mean, the idea of retiring at 45 in India, maybe even before your own boss, it sounded totally absurd, like a total internet fantasy. But you know, curiosity is a powerful thing. One article became 5 turned into 50, and suddenly you were reading books and doing these deep dives that just opened the door to a completely new reality.
But the real shocker in all of this, it wasn't actually learning the mechanics of the stock market. It was discovering this silent thief called inflation. See, when you park your life savings in an FD, the bank tosses you some interest, and you feel great about it. But inflation is just quietly sneaking in the back door, entirely stripping away your purchasing power. It is literally like trying to fill a bucket that has a tiny little hole drilled underneath it. You think you're making progress, right? You're pouring water in, but you're barely treading water. This one single realization totally shifted the financial goalposts. Suddenly, the objective wasn't just about getting returns. The absolute, non-negotiable mandate became beating inflation. Because if your money isn't growing faster than inflation, you aren't just standing still. You are actually moving backward.
Which brings us to Section 2, the trials and the cheapest MBA.
So, how exactly do you start beating inflation? Well, most people instantly ask, okay, what stock should I buy? Or what's the absolute best mutual fund? But honestly, those are entirely the wrong questions. The single most powerful investment made on this whole journey wasn't a stock ticker at all. It was investing heavily in financial education. Learning from the absolute masters, understanding how the whole economic machine works, finding the beauty in keeping things simple, and realizing that being a successful investor really isn't a test of how high your IQ is. It's almost entirely about behavior. It's discipline. It's managing your own psychology. And a huge part of that behavioral shift meant taking a really hard look in the mirror. Let me tell you, tracking your expenses for the very first time is a profoundly humbling experience. Because money rarely disappears in these massive, dramatic transactions, right? It just vanishes in these tiny, steady drops. Random food deliveries, subscriptions you totally forgot you even had, impulse online shopping at 2 a.m., and yeah, buying a cup of coffee that somehow magically costs more per liter than actual petrol. Now, tracking this stuff didn't mean pivoting to some extreme, miserable, frugal lifestyle where you never buy anything fun again. It just meant spending consciously. It's that old saying, what gets measured gets managed. Suddenly, every single rupee needed a distinct purpose. So armed with this brand new mindset, the obvious next step was finally jumping into the equity market. And like almost everyone else who opens a brokerage account, the initial thought was, oh, I got this. I can beat the market. Cue buying random individual stocks. Some of them went up, some of them went down. But here's the thing. Mr. Market has this highly effective, beautifully polite way of teaching you humility. The absolute second you think you're the smartest person in the room, the market is going to prove you wrong. Those active trading mistakes, yeah, they were expensive. But I look at them as the cheapest MBA you could possibly get. They taught incredibly real-world lessons on risk, the actual need for diversification, and how to control your emotions when everything is in the red.
The biggest takeaway from all that? Good investing isn't about perfectly timing the market or finding the next massive 100x winner. It's really just about surviving the game long enough for compounding to do the actual heavy lifting.
Let's move to Section 3, the ultimate weapon, giving every rupee a job.
The real turning point in this whole adventure was abandoning the absolutely exhausting search for the best individual investment. Instead, the mindset shifted to asking one really specific question. What exact job should this investment perform in my portfolio? Think about it. Your portfolio shouldn't just be a random grab bag of stocks and mutual funds you heard about on Twitter. It needs to be a complete, integrated system, like a business. So let's break down this visual business model of wealth, which is based entirely on asset allocation. When you give every single rupee a job, whether that job is growing your wealth, protecting it, or kicking off income, everything just clicks. In this system, 35% sits in Indian equity. That is the core growth engine, right? You're riding the wave of a fast-growing economy. Then 15% goes to global equity. That's your backup growth engine, but more importantly, it's crucial protection against currency risk. Betting your entire future on just one single country is risky. Then we have 20% in debt. Now, people always push back on this. They say, doesn't debt just drag down your overall returns? Sure, maybe it does a bit, but debt's job isn't to make you wildly rich. Its job is to reduce your stress so you are never, ever forced to sell your equity during a market crash. We've got 5% parked in gold, which is purely acting as your uncertainty insurance. And finally, 25% remains in real estate, adding this really solid physical layer of diversification. When you look at it together, these aren't isolated investments at all. They form a completely resilient system.
Now, within that equity slice we just talked about, you are inevitably going to run into the classic, endless debate, active mutual funds versus index ETFs. I swear, people argue over this online like they're fighting over their favorite IPL cricket teams. Everyone is convinced their side is the only right way. But why choose just one? The logical approach is literally just to use both. Active fund managers are in the mix because they can potentially add real value and navigate tricky, specialized markets over time. But index ETFs, they're there because, let's be honest, the broader market is incredibly tough to beat consistently and they keep your costs super low. Instead of trying to play a guessing game on who the ultimate winner of the debate is, why not just put both star players on your team? It instantly increases the overall probability of actually reaching your financial goals.
Okay, but does having this highly structured, rigid, system-based approach mean you can't have any fun at all? No, not at all. Investing should definitely be at least somewhat enjoyable. It is completely fine to carve out a tiny little allocation for individual stocks just to satisfy that itch of trying to find the elusive multibagger. We all dream of finding one. The critical difference here, though, is dependency. With this system, if those individual stock picks absolutely skyrocket, fantastic, drinks are on you. But if they completely tank, your retirement timeline doesn't shift back by a single day. You get all the thrill of the hunt without risking your entire financial future.
And as this whole system matures over time, your fundamental concept of what retirement even is completely shifts. We're all conditioned to think retirement means hitting this one massive, scary number in our bank accounts. But it really doesn't. Achieving true peace of mind actually just boils down to answering one simple question. Just one. Where will next month's expenses come from? That's it. If you can answer that confidently, regardless of what the stock market did yesterday afternoon, you have won the game.
And the absolute best way to answer that question is through a brilliant three-part framework called the bucket strategy. Think of it like this. Bucket 1 is your immediate lifeline. It holds highly liquid, super safe, short-term cash to cover the next few years of your living expenses. If the stock market drops 30% tomorrow morning, Bucket 1 does not care. Your life just continues uninterrupted. Then you have Bucket 2, which acts as the stability bridge. Its entire job is to generate safe, predictable income and slowly refill Bucket 1 as you spend it. And finally, Bucket 3. This is the growth engine. This is where the magic of long-term compounding happens. This money gets locked away for decades. When the market goes into a free fall and everyone is panicking, you don't even log in to check Bucket 3. You just ignore it and let compounding do its thing. Building this structure completely transforms market panic into total peace of mind.
Which brings us to our final part today, Section 4. Resolution. What FIRE actually means. When you actually have a system like this in place, all that market anxiety we're used to feeling, it literally turns into opportunity. And it completely rewires the definition of what we started talking about. FIRE. Financial independence, retire early. It turns out it isn't actually about the retire early part at all. Because let's face it, stopping work entirely and just sitting on a beach sipping drinks, that gets boring really quickly. True financial freedom is actually just about choice. It's having the absolute freedom to spend uninterrupted time with your family on a Tuesday afternoon. It's the absolute luxury of being able to look someone in the eye and say no to things that don't serve you. It's the freedom to choose to work purely because you genuinely enjoy what you do, not because you're sitting there terrified of how you're going to pay next month's bills. That mindset shift is huge. And it wasn't achieved by getting lucky with one magical stock pick. It was built brick by brick through hundreds of small, consistent, educational decisions made over many years.
So I want to leave you with this final, really important question. Are you going to make the conscious decision today to actually learn to understand asset allocation and to build a system of your own? Or are you going to just keep stressing yourself out, sprinting on that hamster wheel, endlessly chasing the elusive highest return? Look, if someone who grew up literally only knowing about fixed deposits and buying a plot of land can successfully pivot, educate themselves, and build a system that guarantees peace of mind, then absolutely anyone can do this. You just have to trust the process. If this explainer shifted your perspective even a little bit today, please share it with anyone you know who is still stuck out there trying to time the market. Because true financial independence doesn't start with some massive windfall of money. It starts the moment you make the decision to learn. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.